Good afternoon. Welcome. I am Chair Anna Sexton, and I would like to welcome you to the October 25th, 2021 Neighborhood Advisory Committee virtual meeting, and we will now call our meeting to order. The Neighborhood Advisory Committee consists of 9 members, all appointed by the City Council with representation from specific community sectors. Members shall be residents of the city or the city's extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction and shall reflect the socioeconomic diversity of Asheville. The term of office is 3 years. The committee was established to advise the City Council on neighborhoods within the City of Asheville's zoning and planning jurisdiction. The committee shall have the following powers and duties. 1. Develop rules and bylaws for the conduct of its business, including but not limited to meeting schedules, officers, voting, and subcommittees. 2. Develop a plan to strengthen neighborhood identity and resilience and to facilitate communication and cooperation between Asheville's neighborhoods and city offices. 3. Develop benchmarks and standards by which progress towards implementing the plan can be measured. And 4, work on special projects that are consistent with the goals of the committee as assigned or directed by City Council. All committee members and staff are participating virtually today, and we appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering meeting code 9247. For those of you who plan to speak during our live public comment today, you will need to hit *3 to be put in the speaker queue. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I will now go through and introduce all committee members and staff who are participating virtually today. For our committee members, please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking, and when you have a question or would like to speak, click the raise the hand icon, and when recognized, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute after you are done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Again, I'm Anna Sexton. I am the chair of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and I live in West Asheville and represent zip codes 28806 and 28728. Bobette Mays.
I'm Bobette Mays, and I am the vice chair, and I represent 28803 and 28704. Good evening.
Greta Bush.
Hi, I'm Greta Bush. I live in East Asheville and I represent at large.
JP Chalarka.
Good evening, this is JP and I represent zip code 28801.
Wendy Hayner.
Good evening, I'm Wendy Hayner. I live in North Asheville and I represent zip code 28804.
Sharon Summerall.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Summerall. I live in Catcher Mountain and I represent 28805.
Elizabeth Lycus Worley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Lycus, and I am an at-large member, and I reside in Oakley, 28803.
Great, thank you. We also have Peter Abzug, who is unable to make our meeting tonight. He is an at-large member as well. And Mike Wasmer, who I don't believe is currently signed on, he also is an at-large member. Our city council liaison is Kim Roney. I don't think she is present currently, but also in attendance are city staff members Jeremy Lett.
Good evening, everyone.
He's the interim neighborhood and community engagement manager. Dawa Hitch. I think Dawa's here.
I am. Hi, everybody. I'm here in the background.
Great. Thanks, Dawa. She's the community and public engagement director. We have the Office of Data and Performance. We have several staff members from the Office of Data and Performance this evening, Eric Jackson and Natalie Bailey and Cameron Henshaw. They will be presenting a little bit later on, as will Videla Satvika, who is in the Planning and Urban Design Department. So thank you to city staff for extending your workday to come and present to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. To start our committee agenda items, I will go ahead and just review, or excuse me, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud as we go through, so folks who are listening in can also follow along a little bit easier. And then additionally, our Vice Chair, Bobette Mays, is our timekeeper. So she will help to try to keep us on track and keep us from going over past 6:30 this evening. So the first item for this evening's meeting is the approval of minutes from our September 27th, 2021 meeting. And action is needed for this specific item. So has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes? And if so,
Yes.
I will go ahead and entertain a motion for approval.
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes for September 27th.
Thank you, Wendy. And then do I have a second?
I'll
That's-
second.
Great, thanks. We've got Greta Bush with a second. So I will now go ahead and go through roll call for approval of the September 27th Neighborhood Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Myself, Anna Sexton, aye. Bobette Mays,
Aye.
Greta Bush,
Aye.
JP Chalarka,
Aye.
Wendy Hayner,
Aye.
Sharon Summerall,
Aye.
and Elizabeth Likas.
Aye.
Great, thank you. The motion carries. All right, now we will move forward with reviewing today's agenda. And so, sorry, let me get to that. We did receive public comment, so we will go through that and then segue into staff activities and updates provided by Jeremy. We will also touch on unfinished business related to the Volunteer of the Year Award. And then our new business tonight is really going to take up the bulk of our meeting, where we have staff from the Office of Data and Performance presenting to us, as well as staff from the Planning Department presenting on the Open Space Amendment. And then, as usual, we will provide updates from the other additional participation from Nack members on other boards and other updates, and then go over agenda items for upcoming meetings, and also talk about our next regular meeting, given that it's going to hit around the Thanksgiving holiday. So moving on to the public comment, we did receive one public comment through it was submitted electronically. It was submitted on Friday. And I will go ahead and just read through that comment and then pass it over to Jeremy. So the comment was, and I do believe, excuse me, let me back up. NAC members should have received a copy of this comment, but it states that in the item 9 public comment section of the minutes of the January 27th, 2020 Neighborhood Advisory Committee meeting, I requested data on the percentage of residentially zoned areas that were not yet in registered neighborhoods, meaning either the number of households or the population. This information would be helpful in knowing which areas could use some neighborhood organization, one of the goals of Nack. Has there been any advance on getting this data? Thanks. And so I believe, Jeremy, do you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly. This is Jeremy. I did get that information, and I'm going to be working with departments. I'm trying to get an answer to that, and I'll reach out to the person who sent us that message and give them that information. So thank you for that submission.
Great. Yes. Thank you for utilizing the public comment. We will also now go into staff activities and updates from Jeremy. So take it away.
Good evening. Again, this is Jeremy. So just want to update you on a couple of things. I know we have a full agenda, so I'll keep it brief. First thing, neighborhood grants. They start on the 1st. We got a lot of submissions. I've gone out and visited a couple of communities and seen some of the projected projects. So we're getting some really good feedback from it, some really good traction. That does end on October the 31st. I repeat, that does end on the 31st. So if your neighborhood, you know someone who might be interested in it, please have them review the application, reach out to me for any questions. I'd be more than happy to speak to them or come out and see the project. So just getting that word out there. The 31st is right around the corner. Want anyone who wants to apply, please do so. We will be doing another one in March. And so some people have let me know that they might not be able to do it this round, but we will be doing it again in March. Yeah, Greg, I'm sorry, Greg, did you raise your hand?
That was my question. You answered it.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna
Okay,
ask
cool.
when's the next round.
Yeah, that's going to be March the 1st. So neighborhood grants are going really well. Again, want to assemble a panel. Would love to have a member from Nack. So if you want to be on that panel, please let me know. We're going to be reviewing these applications. This is going to be about a 2-week period where we clarify the projects with individuals, let them know some of the limitations, make those revisions, and then we'll be moving on to the panel. We'll review that and then think about the awards. So that's the neighborhood grants and the Nack member being on that panel. Last update is our community or our Office of Community and Economic Development. They worked on this homelessness guide. Again, this is something that we're still seeing here in the city. We're still doing a lot of work around trying to address our homelessness issues and dealing with individuals who are houseless. And so this is a really good resource that the Office of Community and Economic Development has made. It's a really good resource. I'm going to start handing around to neighborhoods. So it lets you know job training, places where they can seek shelter. It's a really good resource, guys. They spent a lot of time and effort in making this document and really getting it out to local businesses. I'll be helping in those efforts as well, get them out to neighborhoods, post it on Nextdoor. So please review that information, hand it out to your neighbors. It's just a really good resource to let them know how to connect to local nonprofits and local organizations that can help them here in the community. So at your leisure, please look at that. And that's all the updates that I have.
Thanks, Jeremy. Any questions or comments before moving on to unfinished business? Okay. Great. So we just want to revisit the Volunteer of the Year update. And Jeremy, do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to go ahead and?
I don't mind.
Okay.
Again, I'll be brief. So the Volunteer of the Year, looking at 2021, I've been working with Sarah, who is our deputy clerk, and trying to figure out some rules around just how much communication we can do. And so I have heard back, and I will be reaching out to this working group around Volunteer of the Year. So what I want us to start thinking about is the application for that, how we want to promote that, some of the communication methods that we want to have around that, and really get the word out there so we can get as much feedback as possible. And so I will be reaching out to you all later this week so we can try to figure out a time when we can think about what we've done in the past versus what we want to do moving forward, and try to get as many applications and get the word out as best as possible. So at the beginning of the year, we can have some applicants and then work out that process on selecting that Volunteer of the Year and recognizing them for the work that they've done in the community. And so we will be working on that. I will be reaching out to that committee. And so just look out for an email from me.
Great. Thank you. Wendy, I see your hands up, so go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. This is Wendy Hayner. I'd like to ask a question. Are we going to have a Volunteer of the Year for 2021?
I muted myself. Yes, we are going to have one for 2021.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, we have a packed agenda and we are flying right along, which is great because I want to reserve as much time as possible for staff to present. So we will move into new business. And our first presentation comes from the Office of Data and Performance. So I will turn it over to city staff who are joining us today in that department. And thank you again for taking the time to present to us.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Natalie, we were expecting it to take a little bit longer, so I'm not.
I know. It usually does not go this quickly, so I apologize for misestimating how soon we would have you guys on.
That's perfectly okay. In the meantime, let me just message Natalie. But we'll introduce ourselves in the meantime. I'm Eric Jackson. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing us the time during today's committee meeting. I manage the Office of Data and Performance, which is a brand new office that I think officially formed, as far as I'm concerned, last March 8th, which is when it became more than just me and some hopes and dreams. Anyway, my name is Eric Jackson. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'll let the other two team members introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. My name is Natalie Bailey. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Data Communication Specialist for the Office of Data and Performance.
Hello, my name is Cameron Henshaw. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am the Performance Analyst in the Office of Data and Performance.
All right, and what we're going to do, you got the presentation ready, Natalie? All right. So I'll let Natalie kick it off and dive in when you're ready.
Thank you all so much for your patience. Again, my name is Natalie Bailey, and we are the Office of Data and Performance. And today we are going to give an overview of the office. We've already gone through with our introductions. We're going to give an overview of the office and the mission, how we work, and some of the efforts that we are currently involved in, and how you can use the methodology that we use, and hopefully have some time for discussion.
So I'll kick it off. This is the mission statement for the office, and I want to kind of call out three pieces here. And the first is that word empower. The purpose of our office is not to kind of be a place where you come, hand over your question, we'll crunch some numbers and hand the answer back to you. We'd love to build some of that capability, but with 3 people and a whole city to help transform, that's a bit more than we can take on. So really, we're focused on empowering others to think carefully about outcomes and how to measure those outcomes, and really to kind of help the culture of the city evolve toward doing a better job of using data for the work that they do. And the second thing I want to point out is those 2 words, those kind of the community and city staff. We are not just an internal service department. We really see as part of our mission, obviously working with staff to help staff do a better job of using data in their work. But we also want to make a difference in the community's ability to advocate for themselves and to make good use of data to do that. And so we're really seeing ourselves very much in service, both of internal stakeholders and external, which is part of why we're here today. And then what it's all for, we want to make sure that we as a city are delivering the results that we commit to, and ensuring that we do that in an equitable way. And data is one of the tools that we can use to do that. I think it's also important if we can, together name what are the outcomes we're looking for, how are we going to tell if we're achieving them. That actually gives us a much stronger foundation for good communication. And so that kind of plays through everything we think about and do. I'll turn it back over to Natalie for a moment.
Okay, so how do we work? I'm going to focus on the first 2 bullets before turning it back over to Eric, but we focus on public engagement and reporting. And so that really is about developing a standard way to reach people in our community that aren't often engaged with local government. And we want to do this in the standard way because we do everything through the lens of equity. But we also want to make sure that it is grounded in data so we can do, as Eric just said, teach people the capacity to advocate for themselves and to improve their communities in which they live and work in. And we also want to create ways the community can participate in defining what a successful program or service looks like. This is important because you can be a subject matter expert in speed bumps, but if you go into a community and that's not necessarily what they want, even if you put the speed bumps in and to the standards and specifications that are your industry standard, it's not successful in their eyes. And so we really want to have the community involved in the front end especially, but all throughout any process that the city is undertaking within the communities where they live and work. And the second point is the data-informed decision-making process. We want to integrate data into all of the processes in the city. We want to make sure, again, that that's done from an equity standpoint through an equity lens. And the most premier process in which we have undertaken this methodology was the budget process. And so I want to turn that back over to Eric so he could speak a little bit more about how we did our current year's budget.
So when we talk about data-informed decision-making, we're really talking about changing how people do what they do, leading with identifying the outcomes you want to achieve, identifying the ways you want to measure your progress or success toward those outcomes. And that's a big change. And one of the things I've been now working in government slightly over 5 years. And probably the biggest thing I've learned is that if you want something to be sustainable within an institution like the city of Asheville, you really need to put process behind it, because that's really how everything happens. And of course, the premier process is the city budget. And so we partner with the budget department, the equity department, and communications and public engagement department to try and integrate the use of data and performance thinking into the budget itself. And we started that last year, really starting to talk about ways that we might rethink city services and how we might improve particularly equity outcomes by doing that. And we're building on that this year, starting to identify ways to measure how those changes might impact the community. And because we're really talking about a big change in the way things are done, there's a lot that we're going to need to do in order to build the capacity internally and externally. But certainly internally, we are running classes, teaching people about the framework we'll mention in a couple of slides, but also just how to think about data, how to communicate with data, and so on. We're doing sort of combination training and facilitation focused on particular divisions or teams within the city. And then we have other resources like a twice monthly newsletter that goes out talking about what people are doing, tips and tricks, that sort of thing, as well as an internal discussion channel and a monthly internal collaboration group where staff support each other in identifying good ways to use data and outcome-focused thinking in order to get better results. The last area where we work is governance, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that, partly because for most people, it's a fairly boring topic. It's also incredibly important. It's foundational. You need data systems that can give you updated data. You need to make sure that you've got processes in place that help you to make sure that the data is accurate and complete. And you need to make sure that you're thinking about security, both protecting against malicious actors, which is a big deal nowadays, but also just protecting against accidental harm, which also it's very easy to accidentally, inadvertently release data that you didn't mean to release that potentially can cause harm. And you want to make sure you have good processes in place to prevent that. Let's go to the next slide. So getting a little more concrete, some of the things that we're involved in right now or recently, we're working with the Community and Economic Development Department. We're in the process, obviously, of investing a lot of resources right now in dealing with the problem of houselessness. And so we're working with them to make sure that we're doing a good job of communicating where we are with those efforts, just in terms of basic numbers reporting. And as we change things, making sure that we can report back and be accountable to the community on the impact of the investments we're making. We're providing support for the reparations process in the form of gathering data sets that can help inform the commission that will form, as well as making that available to the community to kind of come to a common understanding of what the issues are that are being talked about. And we, from the beginning, have seen ourselves as a partner with the equity department in both internally and externally, making sure that we help them find the data they need for their work. And then, of course, we have a role thinking about performance or thinking about data, as I said, in the budget process. We've been involved in the American Rescue Plan Act funding and particularly helping think about the evaluation process and how we look at kind of evaluation and reporting down the road from recipients of the grants, including city departments. Talked about the capacity building we're doing for staff and governance, and I'll turn it back over to Natalie to talk about our engagement process, naming the obvious fact that that's what we're doing tonight with you all.
Yeah. So we have been involved in engagement formally and informally since I started back in the spring. And it really started in conversation. And the reason why we started with conversations with community members, with folks that work in advocacy, with our residents and neighbors here, was to gather information. A lot of times people don't consider narrative data, right? But narrative data often informs the baseline. It points us in the direction of where we need to focus our efforts. And so we had these conversations with folks that basically centered around 3 questions, and we're still having these conversations. There was a phase 1. We took that information and it's informing our work for 2022. I'm currently talking to folks as well as Eric and Cameron. And so these conversations will continue to inform the aforementioned work that Eric mentioned as well. And then we're having roadshows such as this one. And this is just to introduce ourselves to folks that are a bit more involved with local government, with city government, to let you all know that we are here and we want to be a resource, but also to hear from you so we could continue to inform our work and make sure that it's representative of as many people in the community as possible.
So that all may feel a little bit theoretical. So I want to kind of ground it when we talk about data and data-driven decision-making. What do we actually mean, and kind of how does this apply to you? And it sounds technical, but for the most part, it's really not. It's about having a disciplined way and some structure for thinking about how we're going to identify outcomes and how we're going to measure whether we're being successful in achieving those outcomes. And really at its heart, we use a framework called results-based accountability. Some of you may have heard of it. It's used fairly commonly a lot in public health, and it's been extended recently locally, looking at education issues, but it's one of the standard methodologies being used across the state and across the country. And there were 2 reasons we ended up adopting results-based accountability, or RBA. One is that it is the foundation of the racial equity toolkit from GARE, the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, that the city has adopted. And so in order to be aligned with that, it made a lot of sense that we would use the foundational framework for that. But the other reason that I really like it is that it is really incredibly simple. It's really just about asking some questions and having the discipline to really think through the results. So and this is a slightly simplified version of the framework, but anytime we're looking at a change, we're looking at a program or a project, we want to ask ourselves, how, as a result of this work, do we want our customers, if it's a service or a program or our community overall, how do we want them to be better off? And the important part of that is that we're starting with that end. We're starting with what are the results we're trying to achieve? And we want to work backward from there. And so the next question we say, okay, how are we going to tell? And we need to agree on this in advance. How are we going to know if we're succeeding? How are we going to tell if we're making progress? That doesn't necessarily have to be numbers, although it often will be. But as Natalie said, other kinds of data can be very important and relevant. But we want to have as objective as possible a set of ways of measuring whether we're succeeding. So performance measures. We start from the results, we identify performance measures. And then the next thing we want to do is say, okay, what's the baseline? Where are we starting from? But RBA actually takes it one step further. Say, where are we now and what will happen if we don't change anything? So we're going to actually do some predicting of where we think things will go so that we can ask ourselves, is that okay? Because we all have a lot to do. Maybe it's okay and we should focus our resources on a different question. But if not, then we can say, well, if we do nothing, then it's going to get worse or it's going to stay the same. And we can start to think in terms of what are we going to actually do in order to turn that curve? If it's going up and we don't want it to go up, how are we going to start turning it down? And we're focused on improvement rather than specific targets. And then, of course, we go into defining those specific strategies. And this is a cycle. So having begun to work, having begun to implement whatever strategies we have chosen, we want to come back in a little while, whether it be a month, quarter, a year, and say, how are we doing on the measures we agreed to measure this by? And what'll happen if we keep doing what we're doing? Again, maybe things are going great and we just keep doing what we're doing. Maybe we're done. Maybe we discover that our strategies were not, in fact, as effective as we thought. And we can ask ourselves, okay, what can we now do to change the trajectory of where things are going? And because this is nothing more than a simple set of questions, and we have tools and techniques and so on to kind of drill down into that, but it's also something that pausing to think through these questions on anything that you undertake all by itself actually tends to lead to better results, because you're taking the time to bring that discipline to what are we trying to achieve, how are we going to try and achieve it, and how are we going to agree to measure whether we're being successful. Those are questions you can apply in your own work, whether it be in this committee or in your own work outside of this committee. You can ask staff these questions. So we want to be able as a standard to say that we as a city are able to say, what are the results we're trying to achieve? How are we going to measure? And to use that to come to agreement with our community about whether things are actually working or not. And then because we're trying to build some shared language and shared thinking about this, so that, whether it be in this committee or in city council or in a conversation at a neighborhood meeting, we can talk about what are the results, how are we going to measure it, what'll happen if we do nothing. Using these ideas in your own interactions in your own communities is another thing that you can do. Natalie?
Okay, so we've got some resources for you, and the main one is our Office of Data and Performance webpage. As Eric stated, we will have a quarterly newsletter that will be starting up soon, and we invite you all to sign up for it. And you can reach out to us directly, either through the office's page or directly to Eric. We really want to hear from you because we want to be a resource for you and the work that you all conduct. And so this is the fun part. This is the discussion part. We've got 3 questions here, but I really want to focus on the last one. What are some ways in which the Office of Data and Performance can support you in your work? Again, we want to be a resource. You all work and are engaged with the city in a different level than most of our neighbors and residents are. And so we'd like to hear from you. So I'm gonna stop sharing.
Sharon, go ahead.
Well, you know, for a complex topic, that was amazingly, wonderfully delivered. So thank you for that, because I kind of sort of understood a portion of it. So what I get asked a lot about in my involvement, say with my other outside groups, is let's talk about like outside consultants. I'll get people ask me, is there any data that is driven that says that we need to hire outside consultants as opposed to keeping it in-house? And when we hire outside consultants, what kind of results are we getting when our city is spending, which seems like an enormous amount of money in the community to go outside? And I know it's driven by probably ends up at the city's manager's desk that will make that decision. But there's got to be some data previous to that that says we can't do this in-house. And where does that data live? And then where do we get the data after we've hired that outside consultant to find out the results of that? And I get asked that a lot, and I just go, I have no idea.
So, and I don't know that I can answer the specific question about consultants, but I would say that, you know, for any project that we take on, any initiative that we take on or study, we ought to be able to explain why we're doing it the way, you know, why a particular strategy is the best strategy. And that may be, you know, in the case of consultants, that may be that we lack internal capacity to do something. Either because we're already overloaded or we simply lack the expertise in a particular area. But in any case, we ought to be able to answer that question. Why this strategy and not some other one? Why a consultant and not? And then I would also sort of say that it doesn't really matter whether we go with the consultant route or internal staff route. We ought to be saying, okay, what is success here? And how are we going to measure it? And then we can look at, one thing I would say is that whether you're hiring a consultant to do something or you're using staff, you're using extremely expensive resources. And so you want to make sure that those resources are being used well. You know, staff, you don't see the exact dollar numbers behind staff time, but you put a whole bunch of people onto a project in the city and you actually end up spending, you know, one of our most precious resources, which is time. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that handled in the ODAP? Is that where people go for questions? So is this where, when people have questions, where does this data live? Do we come to you on your website and hunt for
questions
that?
About where data live, very often that would probably come first through our public records officer. It can depend a little bit, but that would be the most kind of standard way, and that way everything gets coordinated because the information may live across many departments. And so if, you know, you are welcome to reach out to any staff member. If you reached out to ODAP, then, you know, we can go ahead and make sure that the public records officer gets involved. But that would be the best route, is to go through the public records office.
Thank you.
And by the way, thank you for the kind words. You have said both that we didn't do too bad a job and that we can improve. And we like looking for ways to improve.
Wendy, I see your hand up. Please go ahead. You're on mute, Wendy.
So sorry. Thank you, Anna. This is Wendy Hayner. I have a question pertaining to 28804. We have a number of neighborhoods that are not organized yet, and there was a lot of questions recently as to where's the lines drawn, as to what city street is incorporated into a particular area. And I'd like to know if your organization, if your committee takes care of that for us and can draw those lines for us. Thank you.
So, and I don't know, Jeremy, if you want to just the IT department, and we're part of the IT department, which I should have pointed out earlier. The IT department has, maintains the map information. One of the things I learned fairly early on in the city is the city organization doesn't tell neighborhoods what their boundaries are. The neighborhoods tell the city what their boundaries are, and we try and keep up. Sometimes more successfully than other times. But you can certainly get defined neighborhoods we have on maps, and I think you can probably get access to it all online. But if not, we'd be happy to help you find
Thank you.
Information.
Greta, you're next.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, this is Greta Bush. Just a quick question. I clicked on this link to sign up for the newsletter, and I'm wondering if it's sending me to join a Google group. Is that what I should do?
Yeah, go ahead. So I should probably explain that Google group got formed right as, just as soon as we launched, before we even had much staff. So it's essentially an email list, and that will turn into the newsletter list as soon as the newsletter launches, which will be next month.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but yeah, I get that could be a little confusing.
Elizabeth, please go ahead.
Thanks, Anna. This is Elizabeth Likas. In answer to your question, or thought I have about your question about what can ODAP do for you, I'm curious, is that in the same, the first thing I thought of when you were talking about equity and houselessness and some of that was some of the inequities in the school system. Are you all, is that part of the same entity? Would you all be also able to gather data on some of the school inequities? And is that a role that y'all would do?
So that's a slightly complicated answer because we're not part of the school system, even though the city obviously has a role there. But in one of the interesting things, if we're looking at data about the internal workings of a department in the city, we have the data, we work with the department, it's easy. Well, it's never easy, but at least it's at least all the problems are sort of internal. For most issues that we care about, the city is a stakeholder and has a role, but doesn't necessarily own. So obviously, for example, we care a lot about health health outcomes in our neighborhoods, but that is not a city function, that's a county function. And so we partner with other organizations. If you look at the data sets that we've been gathering for the reparations process, almost all the data is not city data, it's census data or school data. So to the extent that those are relevant, we certainly are a resource in helping find that data. But in all likelihood, we're going to be partnering with the organizations in question in order to actually find it. And probably in the process of making it available, it may be coming through them.
So do you all function sort of as a clearinghouse, like you gather and hold it for, and other groups can come to you?
I think, so for census data, for example, we do actually host localized versions of the census data, even though that's obviously the federal government that does that. In other cases, we probably wouldn't. We would let Buncombe County But we are looking, so for example, we have a project that we're just about to get started that we're actually pretty excited about with the Buncombe County Library, the Special Collections, to create a finding guide for finding data, which, you know, very often where you're going to end up finding the data is maybe on the Buncombe County site or somewhere in the school system or the library. We wouldn't necessarily host it, but we do see it as part of our role to help people in our community figure out how to find it. But again, we want to make sure that we're doing that in partnership with all of the relevant organizations, since we don't necessarily own the data.
This is Anna, for those listening in. I think we are hitting sort of our time where we need to transition to our next presentation, but just want to say thank you very much to Natalie, Eric, and Cameron for preparing material and presenting to us today. I echo what Sharon said in that it can, like you said, Eric, get kind of technical and into the weeds, which is stuff that I personally love, but you presented it in a very easy to understand way. And I'm really excited that the city has chosen to invest in building that capacity. And I think that it will be a really good thing for stakeholders internally and externally. And so now we have resources that have been shared in our meeting materials for fellow committee members. So if you have any additional questions or any ideas come to mind, utilize those resources, utilize Jeremy and other city staff. And so again, thank you very much for coming to present to us tonight. And
thank you so much for allowing us time on your agenda to share this with you. Do feel free to reach out, and we will leave you to the rest of your meeting.
Great. Thank you. Have a great evening, y'all.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. We are staying on track, which is a very good thing. And we are going to now segue over to Vidila, who has a presentation from the planning department on the work towards amending the current open space ordinance language. So Vidila, I will hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Anna. Let me get my screen sharing here, and I will get going. My name is Vidila Satvika. I am with the Department of Planning and Urban Design. I am here to talk to you about a wording amendment, which is a basically change to our development standards. This is a nice segue from the presentation we just heard, because you can think of zoning as one of our city's regular processes that ensures that something works well. And every once in a while, we make updates to try to improve and amend our standards. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Open space, here's what our purpose states for open space. And I'll just highlight that this doesn't, I'm not talking today about parks space or city-owned land or greenways. This is about certain requirements that we require larger developments, such as apartment buildings or subdivisions of property, to set aside a small area of open space. And it's both for humans as well as for nature. So I have this image of the scale here because it's both looking at trying to balance the needs of humans and the non-human or natural world. Okay. So I want to first start off by letting you know, if you haven't heard, but we've been working with a task force that has been made up of representatives from 8 different commissions, including Nack. Anna and Sharon sit on our open space task force. We've met 16 times over 9 months, And the reason that we created this task force is because we actually created new standards, new language for open space, and we brought those to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We actually brought it to them twice, and then we were going to City Council, and then Council heard some rumblings that some people were concerned about some of the standards, and so we came back and we decided to create this task force so that we can work with the various the different commissions that have very different perspectives, right? Some are very focused on housing or development. Others are focused on trees and preservation and sustainability. So the idea was with this larger group that we could work together to work through the specific details so that we could bring to City Council new standards that are more accepted by everybody. And here are 3 key changes that I'll talk through. One has to do with alignment with infill development, because we know that housing is very important here. Housing prices are going up significantly all the time. We want to focus on better quality open spaces so that people can really use these spaces and that they're a quality asset for communities, and to improve our environment, specifically through stormwater changes. I think a very exciting change that came as a result of the task force was something we weren't expecting, but it was the creation of a separate tree landscaping subcommittee to review landscaping standards. And it might sound strange that this comes about through open space, but really the idea is that trees, especially street trees, they can be thought of as a key component to our public realm, right? The public realm, the streets and sidewalks that all the public share together can be thought of as an open space. And it's been pretty much understood that our street trees are struggling. And so they created this subcommittee to review that. And what we're looking at in that subcommittee is potentially creating new standards citywide that would create minimum uncompacted soil volumes for trees. And the idea is basically that trees have a requirement of soil that needs to be uncompacted, and a third-party review process to ensure that trees are planted correctly so that we actually get the tree canopy and the environmental benefit that we're expecting to get, which we actually don't get very much today. So that was a spin-off that is kind of an exciting part of this open space task force. Okay, so let me talk through some of the standards. First of all, I want to highlight how Asheville currently and under the proposed scenario kind of rates against other cities. So this chart shows the cities on the left, and then open space requirements for residential and for commercial properties. And you can see it's kind of all over the map, but it tends to be pretty much a lower requirement or no requirement in some cases. And Asheville's current standard that is problematic is that it requires in some cases up to 40% of a parcel to be set aside as open space. And this is kind of broken. This basically makes it prohibitive for certain infill projects. And the reason this happened is really sometimes code is written without understanding all the implications, and that's where we stand today. So we're proposing to change it. In a sense, it looks like we're changing it for the worse, but actually what we're doing, and I'll talk this through, is making a standard that allows for lower open space quantities by incentivizing better quality, by incentivizing stormwater mitigation, and the things that we want to capture. So I'll talk through a couple examples. This is today. Here is an infill parcel, which shows these two blue images. The image on the top is an existing building, and the image on the bottom is a proposed structure. And under the current regulations, because of the added square footage of the proposed structure, they would have to make 34%, fully 1/3 of the parcel to be open space. So this entire pink area would have to be open space. And that could be placed anywhere, but you can see that it's incredibly restrictive. It makes a project like this basically prohibitive. And so we're proposing to make that more like 5 to 10%, depending on the open space that's provided. So a higher quality open space wouldn't have to provide as much. If it wasn't as higher quality, it would provide the greater amount. Here's another example. This is a residential subdivision. Currently, you're required to provide 20% of the total parcel as open space. But as you can see in the schematic, that open space can be sequestered behind parcels so that it sometimes is not easily accessible, or it's on the parts of the land that are subpar or difficult to access because they might be steep. And so what we're proposing is, again, that we reduce it by 5 to 15%, but we require it to be a higher quality so that part of it needs to be on the street frontage so that all of the properties can access it easily. But we're not requiring as much because we don't want to make it more prohibitive. So it's this, again, this balance of quality for quantity. So that's the key change for infill development. Next change is to support better quality open spaces. And really what we're saying is that the open space can be reduced by 5% if these 4 conditions are met. One is that open space, most of it has to be contiguous. The second is that the shape generally has to be a regular pattern. Another is that most of the open space has to be practically flat. In Asheville, 5% slope or less is considered basically flat, which is difficult to do in our topography. And the fourth quality would be that you have to provide seating. So 1 linear feet per 250 square feet of open space seating. And if you can provide all of those for your open space, you can reduce the amount from whatever it is, 5% lower. And the idea is that we should get spaces like this where you can still have green, you can still have trees and plants and be lush, beautiful places, but that there will be social places as well. There won't be the open spaces that are on a ravine or on a steep hill slope that people can't access. And then finally, an environmental benefit for stormwater. And this is actually a significant benefit that we're proposing. So currently, the state regulations make it difficult for us to provide for stormwater regulations in some instances. And so we've created this incentive that basically says if you have a large parcel, this is an example of a large big box parking lot, and you want to redevelop your site, a full 50% of that site has to be open space. But if you aren't willing to provide 50% of it to be open space, you can reduce the amount of open space that you're required to provide by integrating stormwater infrastructure. This is something that we do for all new projects. Basically, if they're large, have to do this. But we're restricted because of state regulations on sites that are already impervious like this. So this is what the regulation looks like. It basically says if you're over an acre, your open space requirement is 50%. But you can drop down to this standard that all other parcels are required and held to if you meet our city's stormwater regulations. And so those 3 key changes help us to meet our housing needs. They help us to provide better quality open spaces for a social benefit. And they meet some of our climate and natural benefits that we're trying to achieve. So I've created this flow chart I'll just sort of talk it through. It's quite simple. So we have our open space requirements here, and you can go one of either two directions. If you're a larger parcel, you go up. If you're a small parcel, less than 1 acre, you come down. So I'll just follow this larger parcel flow. If you're a larger parcel, you have this. These are your standards, depending on whether you're a subdivision, multifamily development, commercial, or a mixed-use project. And here are your standards. But if you meet a higher stormwater benefit or provide affordable housing, you can reduce that open space requirement to what everybody else, these parcels that are less than 1 acre, are required. And then if you, in addition to that, are voluntarily willing to provide enhanced design that improves the cohesion of the site, the slope, the shape, and provide seating that have been demonstrated to make open spaces successful public spaces, then you can reduce your open space quantity by another 5%. And that's where you can go at your kind of, the least amount of open space required. So that's the summary. We are preparing to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission actually next week on Wednesday, and we're requesting a statement from Nack, ideally in support, and if not, whatever you want to let the Planning and Zoning Commission know, and then we're slated to go to council in December. And with that, I'll open up for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Videla. Greta first, and then Elizabeth to follow.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks, Videla, for that explanation. I have 2 questions. So my first is I'm trying to understand, I wrote them down, so I'm looking down. How does reducing the open space help with stormwater and heat island mitigation, especially if a developer chooses the affordable housing route? I'm just picturing if they choose the affordable housing route and then they only have to have a 5% open space, and then we continue to get rain the way we have been. I'm just wrapping my head around reducing the open space, wondering how that affects the nature component. And then the second question is, I've lived in places where cities have entire parking lots that are permeable and they have water collection underneath. So I'm wondering if the city is doing anything to encourage that sort of thing, because that way you can kind of get a little bit of both.
Yeah, great. Thanks for those questions, Greta. So the first one, so a lot of this is a balancing act. And we're in conversations with our affordable housing folks, and it became clear that having these increased requirements for making half of your parcel to be open space or to meeting a higher stormwater standard would make affordable housing much more prohibitive. So basically, this was a balance where we compromised and said, if you're building affordable housing, we're not going to hold you to the same standard that we're trying to have other developments meet. So that's it in a nutshell. When it comes to pervious paving, yes, we allow for pervious paving, and there are all kinds of green infrastructure that we allow. Typically, what happens is most projects that I'm aware of, they build storm tech systems, which are subsurface, basically water capture systems, so that they can maximize the development of their site, because the cost benefit is the best for them. It's not as expensive as if you're going to have a pervious paving system. You also have to have the appropriate gravel mix underneath that has to have a certain depth and a certain type of gravel, and it involves a lot more design and higher costs effectively. So it's permitted, but we don't require it. And
do they get a tax break if they do that?
I don't know. I don't think they do. I know that there is it One Medical Park Drive, where like there are lots of eye doctors and things off of Sweeten Creek.
Mhm.
That parking lot is Pervious Paving. And I reached out to them and talked to them at one point when I was working on some impervious zoning standards at the time. And apparently it's really great and it functions well. They have to vacuum it actually like once or twice a year with these industrial vacuums that take out silts. And it's a little bit more expensive, but it does an incredible job of capturing stormwater. So, it would be great if we could move in that direction at some point, but currently it's not required and it's a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, maybe there could be incentives built around that too.
Yeah, we need to, I think this is the direction that we're going with zoning is more, we kind of set a higher bar and we say, if you don't want to meet that higher restriction, like in this case, 50% of your parcel is open space, then you have to meet the higher bar, which is providing stormwater. So maybe we can in the future look at having an alternative instead of meeting stormwater. You could meet stormwater with pervious paving, but you're not required to do that in order to capture the water and to meet the public benefit.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I go, Anna?
Yes, sorry. Please go ahead.
Sorry. Thanks. This is Elizabeth Likas. Thanks for this presentation. It's really interesting. And I have a couple of questions as well. When one of your slides, I guess a couple of slides ago, you were talking about what you defined or operationalized as high quality open space, and you had those 4 criteria.
Right.
Do they have to meet all 4 of them or just any one of them?
All of them.
All 4.
Yes.
Okay. Great. And my second question is, walk me through how this applies to hotels.
Well, hotels would be,
requirements.
yeah. So hotels are a non-residential product. So if we look at our cheat sheet here, first of all, it depends on the parcel size. So if it's a hotel on a larger parcel, they would have to provide 50% of their parcel as open space, or they provide stormwater benefits. So they would most likely provide the stormwater benefits, and then they would be in this category of providing 10% open space. And then if they were willing to meet these higher standards, in some cases they can meet them, in other cases it might be too restrictive, they could bring their open space down to 5%. And so, then they would have to provide the seating and those other benefits, but then they would be down to 5% open space. And that's really how basically all commercial properties, that would be their trajectory.
This is Anna. We all received notification from Bobette regarding being conscious of time. I know that there are a lot of technical details in this presentation. And if there aren't any other questions, I think what I'd like to do is to go ahead and release you, Vidila, so that you can call it a work day and just say thank you for presenting some, ordinance and code is always in the weeds and really detailed. And so I think moving out of that, we can let you go, and then we
Thank
can
you.
move to, yes, thank you very much. Move towards receiving an update from Sharon about sort of the open space task force and reconciling sort of like that side of things with what Vidila presented today, so that hopefully leaving this meeting, we will have some sort of statement that we can agree upon to then move to P&Z next week. So Sharon, your hand was raised.
Yeah. So this has been a long, involved process. I was involved in the first iteration of people, and then it turned into this second working group. And it's very difficult to have Vidila's great PowerPoint presentation without having all the things that are counter to that discussion. And there will be, I can provide, but probably not in enough time, everybody some information that has got issues like when we brought up the hotel. That only happens like in the central business district, no open space is required. And we asked for central business district to have open space. So therefore, that when you're in central business district, it's a moot point because there is no open space. Added to it is definitely a reduction in open space. The project that he presented was a project that's been presented in West Asheville, where the people that own the property wanted densely build in that area. And next to it is an old established neighborhood with a 1920s house that's butting right up against to it and is changing the whole tenure of that whole West Asheville neighborhood. And so very old trees were going to be removed. So when he was showing open space, how much area originally in the front would be required, there was a lot of old trees that are in that area that would be removed. So there's a lot of nuances in this. Everybody on the task force realizes that we have a need for infill. It's how does it look and how do we want the city to look? The city did not want public comment on this and take it to the public and ask the neighborhood. So they took it to committees. So what's going on is up to people on the task force to try to give information that's very dense to committees so that we can have an opinion to send something to planning and zoning and the commission. So that's a lot of information to get out in a week for everybody. So I'm suggesting that we can't make an informed decision. I can send out some information and be told how not to violate the open meeting laws so that I'll include conversations and everybody and give out the information that we see that is flawed in this. I see that's flawed, and I believe that Anna, who sat through it, agrees as well. And I know Vidilla's got a response, but I'd like to have the floor on this. And then we can have some kind of discussion so that we can decide whether we want to send a letter to P&Z and say that we can't make an informed decision or we can make an informed decision, and as a collective group that we decide collectively what we want to do. But there's much information that needs to be disseminated in a week.
Vidila, I see your hand raised really quickly, and so yeah, please go ahead and then.
Sure. Just really quickly, for the rest of the commission, you know, Sharon and Anna have been on this for 9 months. I just want to highlight that the thing that's important to remember, and I'm sure you may be thinking about this, is that we have balancing city goals. We have goals of city providing housing, affordable housing, and we have goals of providing quality open spaces. You know, the infill that Sharon is discussing in West Asheville is used. There's language about dense infill. We're talking about a 2-story structure, you know, on a larger property. So you have to, of course, think of this through your own lens, and just to keep that in mind, that this is about balancing needs. And I hope you keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Vidila. This is Anna. I do want to be mindful of time so that we can wrap it up right around 6:30. I want to extend appreciation to city staff for involving Nack in the first place on this. I think it was very important and very well received that we were able to participate in this process. And I think things like this are things that we want to be utilized for. Sharon has really taken sort of the primary role for Nack since she's had some previous involvement on this. And I've just been trying to sort of understand as we go along. And what I would like to see is an opportunity for you all tonight who have received some more cohesive final information to have more time to digest it before making a decision and making a collective statement. I'm going to just open up space for that, but I want to just sort of see where everyone's kind of do a temperature check with you all on that to see if you want to go ahead and give a thumbs up or give a thumbs up with conditions, or perhaps even feel like our statement as Nack is we need more time. So just want to throw that out there. All right, JP, Bobette, and then Greta.
So Anna, are you requesting a motion then to make that decision, or what are you thinking about?
I am just opening up the floor for discussion at this point. Sharon and I have been able to review and sort of discuss this information as part of the task force, but this is new information to you all in this format, and I want to be cognizant of that and provide options, or at least make it known that there are options available for, and want to hear what you all have to say.
And based on your in-depth review of this matter so far, what are your opinions? Perhaps you can share that with us, pros and cons of what we're looking at, so that we can at least help decide here if we need to deliberate more, or if this is an easy yes or an easy no.
Sharon, do you want to jump in?
I have more information to impart, but it's taking to send it out, and where I have disagreements with it, I have agreements with it, but this is not an easy change with the neighborhoods when we're reducing open space. We're in need of stormwater change, and they were using, I'm not sure why stormwater is an impetus to reduce open space for infill, when to me, stormwater incentives should go into the stormwater ordinance and not go into the open space ordinance. There's a number of things that I question, because I've questioned from the beginning that anytime you reduce open space, it impacts the green infrastructure, it impacts the neighborhoods, affordable housing. It's volunteer. It doesn't guarantee affordable housing. And there's also a fee in lieu proponent to this, that they can buy their way out, as in the current, there's a current open space ordinance, and then there's the changes. Fee in lieu can be purchased instead of this incentivizing. So it's a strongly worded suggestion, and the ultimate goal is to reduce open space. And so, and I've got more information in part. I just can't do it in a few words or less to get it out to everybody.
All right, Bobette, and then Greta.
Yes, this is Bobette. I have a concern because of, I think we're not ready. I would like for us to have more time, because I live in Shiloh. And if you're talking about reducing open spaces for more affordable housing, and I have seen that come into our neighborhood, and I've seen how much that they're taking away from that space. And I know that a lot of things have to go to planning and zoning, but I'm just not, I don't feel comfortable at this time to go further without having more information.
Thank you, Bobette. Greta?
This is Greta. I agree with Bobette. I think we need more time. If it's taken 9 months to get to this point, and now we finally have something to think about, I think it's only fair to give us more than a week to consider it.
Thanks, Greta. Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm thinking along those same lines. There's no way just in a this presentation that we could get to all of that information. I am curious, Sharon, you said something about at some point they didn't want this to go into neighborhoods for community input, and so they took it to committee. That makes me think there's some more to ask about.
I don't know why. Vidila probably can answer why, but we did ask from the beginning that it go into a more public comment, but I don't know, probably, I'm going to guess time, but I'm not sure why.
Videla, I see your hands up. Please go ahead.
Sure. That's just a false statement. We had no intention this has not been in any way avoiding the neighborhoods. In fact, the reason we created this task force was to get representatives from different parts of our community to come together. And, you know, we can for any change to zoning, we can have myriad public input processes. But ultimately, you know, at some point we need to, if we want to make some changes, we have to come to a decision. So I think we've had a long time that we've basically had a resolved ordinance that's been more or less the same. And you know, it was expected that this would have been brought to you and discussed. I don't know to what extent you've been discussing this over the last 9 months. But that was our intention, and if it didn't happen, you know, maybe you need time to read it yourselves, and I could talk to you about specific applications and how it works, and that could be something that we can do as well. But I just wanted to respond to that. It was not intended to avoid the public comment or anything like that.
Thanks, Videla. Sharon, I'll let you go in just a second. I do just want to say too, like, we've been working to, maybe there was miscommunication about when this should have been on the agenda for Nack and when it shouldn't have, at what point in the process. But it felt a little premature before we had something more set in stone to bring to Nack. And so, again, really appreciate the time that you've taken to put together material and to share with folks. And I understand certainly the balance in trying to negotiate how much input is useful versus being counterproductive. But given that Nack members are just seeing this for the first time over the first couple of days, but you know, aside from receiving updates from Sharon and me at each meeting, receiving some staff explanation on things, I do think I certainly understand and empathize with the need to have more time to sort of digest everything. Sharon.
Real quick, on the Urban Forestry Commission, there was a lot of pushback when this first came through. There wasn't anybody involved. They came to different boards and commissions, and they came to us, and I said, this is too complicated to rush this through. And so we spent about, I'm going to guess, about 7 or 8 months working with Videla and a subcommittee from the Urban Forestry Commission. And when we pushed, and this is my being involved in this, and I will say this, when we pushed back hard on the lack of open space and green infrastructure, then all of a sudden, we're involved in another committee that involves Nack, that involves SACE, that involves Urban Forestry Commission after we'd been on it for 9 months. So it was a different tactic taken to take open space somewhere else. So I've been doing this for 3 years now, I would say, or 2.5 years. So this, in my estimation, has not been an open policy, open with the public, other than people all of a sudden putting their hands up and going, what's going on? So that is my take on it.
Thanks, Sharon. This is Anna. It's 6:23. I know that we need to keep things moving. So I think we've gotten a good cross-section of discussion and opinions from city staff and committee members. And so at this point, I'll entertain a motion for moving forward somehow with some sort of statement. So or at least open up the floor if anyone has any recommendations or ideas. Go ahead, Greta.
I think we just need to, before we leave here, if we're saying we need more time, we need to think about by when are we going to follow up and how. I don't think that we'll be given another whole month for our next meeting.
Right. This is Anna. I think, and Videla, go ahead and jump in after this. I think sort of what we're thinking is if Nack doesn't have a month's worth of time to sort of review and come back at the November meeting with comment or a statement. Perhaps the statement we make tonight is we can't take a stance because we need more time. Okay. Babette, go ahead.
I agree with that also. If we're going to give a statement for them to make a presentation, we should have to say that we are not capable at this time of making a decision to be able to send a letter of, I think it would be a letter of affirmation that we go along with what he has presented with us tonight. And I think that in order not to hold them up, it's just we don't have enough time. We don't have enough information. And that would be all that we would send to them. And we appreciate what we do have. But it's just because I have a problem with the fact that we're talking about neighborhoods and the impact on neighborhoods. And then you have task force and you have certain committees, but are you really talking to the people where they live? And they need to know what's happening. And it hasn't been going that way. And so I think there's still some more concerns. I think there's some things that have to be said. So I would just like that if we could, I don't know if we need to make a motion that
we do.
We're at this time, we are not make the motion at this time that the committee is not prepared to give a statement because we need more time, but we appreciate the information we've been given.
So Babette, you've made that motion. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay. Elizabeth seconds that. All right. I will go ahead and run through roll call, and then we can move on to the final aspects of our meeting. Sorry, just want to make sure I've done my list here. Chair Anna Sexton, I am in favor of that. So aye. Babette Mays.
Aye.
Greta Bush.
Aye.
JP Chalerka.
Aye.
Wendy Hayner.
Aye.
Sharon Sumrall.
Aye.
And Elizabeth Likas.
Aye.
Okay. The motion carries. I think that is the statement that we will be sharing with P&Z. And I guess Jeremy and Vidila coordinate with you all to get that language to forward on. All right, that wraps that up. And I will move quickly through. So item number 8 on the agenda, Nack member updates on other boards. Sharon's shared a little bit on Open Space Task Force. The Multimodal Transportation Commission, we have not met since our last Nack meeting. This is one of those odd months where our next meeting for multimodal is this coming Wednesday, so I don't have any updates to share with you all. We have 3 minutes left, but want to take some very brief, 1 to 2 minutes each for a Nack community engagement update from JP and Mike, followed by a neighborhood update from Wendy. So JP, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Sure, and this is going to be very brief. After our last meeting, we talked about the need for us as a committee to think through our communication strategy and our communication channels outside of what we've been doing, because what I've been hearing and what Mike's been hearing over the last several meetings is that participation in Nack-related things among the community is low. Potential awareness is low. So there's a chicken and egg situation where we might be expecting folks to contribute to the conversation who either don't know who we are, don't know how to reach us, and don't have access to the same vehicles of communication that we've relied so much on for the last X amount of years. So Mike and I had a brief brainstorm, and we discussed this whole concept about engagement/communication. So we are proposing 2 things that we consider as first steps in a series of a longer action plan to help us both establish our presence in the community and be very clear about what we do and how community members can reach us through alternate channels, not through the traditional Facebook and other means. So that is for us to develop a 1-page flyer, toss sheet that is very short, very simple. It's not meant to be delivered exclusively through posts on social media, but through more traditional channels, potentially via email, or even posted at a community center, at a church, or some other means. Even as a third alternative, to be mailed as a postcard to zip codes around the city. That would be strategy number one. Tactic number one. Tactic number two would be to use our public service announcement capability as a city to reach out to radio stations, the top 3 or so that are listened to most widely in this particular area, and ask for their support in pitching a NPR style public service announcement where throughout the day, at various points throughout the day for a week or so, they're advertising a short blurb about who we are, how to reach us. So those are the two very short and very easy next steps that we're proposing in terms of our outreach/engagement challenge, which is perhaps the reason why many folks don't know about us, is because they don't know how to reach us, and perhaps that's why we have such low participation when we go out into the community and expect folks to come to our meetings if we go on site. And that's all for now.
This is Anna. Thanks so much, JP. My question, I guess, now is Jeremy, what's next? What do we need to do to sort of carry that forward? Or maybe even, Jeremy, I'll direct that to you.
Yeah, I can reach out. So I really like the postcard idea. So there are some things around. There are some conversations we can have about that, what that looks like, the expenses, and look at how we can cover that. So I can reach out to JP and Mike, and we can have a conversation, and then maybe at our next meeting, provide an update and talk about next steps.
Wonderful. That sounds great. JP, and since Mike's not here, just thanks for taking the lead on that and thinking through some of those things. So, Wendy, going to turn it over to you to quickly share whatever update you have.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to hold off on my information until next month when we've got more time.
Okay. We will say no update today and then add that to the agenda next week or next month. I'm sorry. Sorry we ran out of time. I think that both staff presentations were very, very important. And it was also important for us to have discussion after each of those presentations. Elizabeth, go ahead.
I know we're out of time, but I just have a quick point of information or order. I'm not sure. Is this an appropriate committee to talk about some of the neighborhood events that have gone on, like open streets and Asheville on bikes? Or is that something I can save that for next time? But
that's what mine was going to be about, to give ideas to all of you to spread to your neighborhood associations, ideas that were happening in neighborhoods in 28804.
Oh, wonderful. I would say let's go ahead and that information can certainly be shared via email and electronically between meetings so that we can, when Babette and Jeremy and I get that information from you all and we huddle up for sort of our check-in to set agendas for upcoming meetings, we can use that information and sort of plan accordingly. Elizabeth, the open streets on Thompson Street was certainly something that I thought might be really interesting. We're getting that presentation from Multimodal on Wednesday from Michael Stratton. So I'll think about that for sure. But I'm glad both of you brought that up. But yeah, please feel free to utilize email. Just don't reply all. And then we are avoiding discussion. Some other agenda items for upcoming meetings include the board training that we've been talking about, a community resource officers update where we're getting just information on that program. And then also the water department wants to come present to us on the lead and copper education program. So we will hopefully be getting that at our next meeting as well. Our final item of the night is the scheduling for our next regular meeting, and I think I've maybe seen some conflicting information. November gets tricky, so does December because of the holidays. And so, Jeremy, just want to check in with you. Do we have it on the calendar now for the Monday, the 22nd or the 29th?
I have, oh, sorry, this is Jeremy. I have it on my calendar for the 22nd. I could be wrong and it could be the 29th, but
Okay.
I have it on my calendar the 22nd. So sorry, give me 1 second. Let me.
Does the 22nd present scheduling conflicts for anyone with the holiday? Okay. I don't think that. JP, go ahead.
Yes, I will not be in town that day.
Okay. So you would not be able to make that meeting. Okay. We can also check with Greta. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just so you know, on the agenda, it says it's on the 29th.
Yeah, I've seen.
That's me. Sorry. I apologize. That's on me, guys. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That's me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
I apologize, and I'm sorry. That was a flub on me. I'll update my agenda.
No worries. So it sounds like the 29th,
Okay.
November 29th is our next meeting date. Thumbs up, everybody. Good. Okay.
I think either one probably is fine.
Okay. I would, yeah, Sharon.
Sorry, can we get a meeting notification ahead of time, Jeremy? Because I'm so swamped with meetings of what I do that I didn't have this, and I was kind of shocked, and I shouldn't have been. I should have known it. But
Yes.
if you don't mind sending it out so I can get it on my computer, and that way I'm prepared. If you don't mind.
I don't. I'll get that notification out sooner. So, does the week prior, does that work, or the Friday prior?
Yes, perfect.
Week prior is definitely, I think, what would be great to aim for.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Greta.
So are we typically, should we be looking at the last Monday of every month or the fourth Monday of every month? Just so I could put it on recurring on my own calendar, our meeting time date.
I think it's typically, it says, hold on. It says on our boards and commissions Nack specific page, the committee meets on the fourth Monday of each month at 5 p.m. I think that there may be instances due to holidays or whatever that might be adjusted, but
so should we be looking at the 22nd and not the 29th?
I think the 22nd, I'm assuming the 22nd was being treated as a holiday week, perhaps. I don't want to complicate things. I am fine with the 29th. I would prefer the 29th, but if anyone has any strong thoughts or feelings otherwise, raise your hand. And if not, we'll go with the 29th, and we'll work to get out a calendar invite to folks with a little bit more lead time. Jeremy.
Sorry, Anna. This is Jeremy, and I'm sure this is what we're about to get to. To your point, Greta, yeah, that's why I even had on my calendar is the 22nd is that fourth Monday. But again, for scheduling purposes, the 29th works best, which it does for me. I'm fine with that. So, but to your second part, we will be keeping it on the fourth Monday of each month.
Great. Awesome. All things considered, I'm not too upset about a 6:38 adjournment time, but I will now go ahead and adjourn the meeting unless any objections. So adjourned. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.